Hello, my little Liebfrau Milches, and welcome to the Friday edition of Moohead Radio. I'm your host, a big and furry bovine. As you can see, the camera, I found out what was wrong with the last broadcast. First of all, I was on it. And second of all, the camera had defaulted to standard 480i definition, which made it look like I was broadcasting from the Bat Cave. So I just picked this up to, a higher definition, and here we are. At least you can see my ugly face, and I'm conspicuously hiding the middle part of my body. Thank you. Uh, so far, you're seeing how things are playing out with the Cavaliers, and if you've been watching this program, then you already knew what was going to happen. Okay. I guess this should come as no surprise. Uh, when the head coach doesn't have the final exit interview, Donovan Mitchell does, you pretty well know what the story is, right? Now, I'm not pointing the finger at Donovan Mitchell, making him look like he's the bad guy, but you already knew if you watched this podcast that Donovan Mitchell and Karis LeVert and their agent don't like JB. Not personally. They don't like what he does, how he coaches, and how he forces people into playing ridiculous consecutive minutes. And good morning, Captain Fierce. Good morning, good afternoon. I'm sorry, to both Rick May and Captain Fierce. Good to see both of you on board. The problem that we have is that I told you what would happen with Tibbs too, didn't I? There are some things that are so repetitive that you'd be stupid not to notice them. And people said, well, it was a fluke that Jalen Brunson fractured his left hand trying to swipe a ball from behind. Yeah, but if it wouldn't have been that, it would have been, Mr. Hart, Hart just sitting there and collapsing and his back going out and everything, you can only go at it that hard so long. It's obvious. Well, it was obvious that JB was going to get fired too. Now, I'm going to take the next step in just a moment and tell you what's obvious to happen next. But we'll start with the reminder that everything that you see in professional sports now is tainted because of gambling. And I will say this if I'm fortunate enough to be doing this for another 20 years, I'll be saying the same thing, pointing back to this point in time, saying this was the day the music died. All right. If that was Buddy Holly crashing into a gully, which I really don't think is the case, I think rock and roll was emanated from rhythm and blues and went in a different direction. And music didn't die. But sports and naivete and do you believe in miracles? Yes. All that stuff gone. Here's a headline. Bronny James attracting wagers to be number one pick at NBA draft. Now, is this pathetic? Bronny James, of course, is not going to be the number one pick of the NBA draft because all somebody has to do is take a second round pick and say, we'll let you stick around with the team and hold the last spot on the bench and you'll never play if we can get your father, which I think really sucks because that's the thing he's going to be up against his whole life as a professional athlete anyway. If he ends up playing in Europe, oh, it's too bad what happened to Bron's son. Poor Bronny ended up in, well, they can always name a paper towel after him. But gosh, isn't that a shame? In Europe, he's playing in China. He's playing in Turkey. But the way they can get around all of this, he's not going to be a top pick in the NBA draft. But people will gamble on it. Gambling diseased people will definitely gamble on this. You're only going to put $1,000 on Bronny being the number one pick, because if it comes to pass, I can get however many more thousands of dollars. We're going to get to this in just a minute, Captain Fierce, because I got more to tell you. All right. So that's the first sign. But then, I don't know if you were fortunate enough to see the final out in the White Sox loss to the Baltimore Orioles. And it's not that I talk baseball, but Jesus Christ. Andrew Benintendi is up. He hits an infield fly. There were men on first and second for the lowly White Sox with one out. Infield fly rule goes into effect. The guy who was on second just walks back to second to just go back onto the bag. And now it's first and second with two out, right? Wrong. Ball game! It's over. It's like, the announcer's like, the game can't be over. There's only two outs. They're calling interference? Yes, they did. They weren't even going to give a chance to the White Sox to win that game, God only knows. Every bit of naivete of believing in miracles is gone. And it sucks. It ruins sports for me completely. This is the worst single call, and now Major League Baseball is questioning that umpire's game-ending call, who I'm sure was cheating. Absolutely positive. There's no way when you look at that replay, how can you get in somebody's way when the person is coming in to catch it from behind you and you're moving sideways? That's fucking shit, man. That is just fucking shit. 2 outs and 1. They run off the field. The Orioles are victorious. Now, for those people who honestly believe that what's happening right now with the Cleveland Cavaliers will help the organization get closer to a championship, I have some news for you, pal. The Cleveland Cavaliers ain't going to no championship. That's not what the league wants. And let me explain the pecking order of the way things work in the NBA. And I hate to break your hearts. We were fortunate enough to get one championship. One. And the league shot it down after that one because there was no future in the LeBron story in Cleveland anymore. There was no story in Cleveland anymore. It's like, how can we reload the Golden State Warriors? So, yeah, we'll make sure we get Kevin Durant to go to the fucking Warriors. They'll crush everybody. And that's what happened. It's pathetic. If you think that bringing Donovan Mitchell back is going to bring you closer to a championship, guess again. That's not gonna happen. I mean, a guy like Halliburton, now he injured his hamstring. Now the Pacers are dead meat. Like you knew they would be, because the league consistently does a couple of things. And they do it over and over again. There's nothing complex about this. If they're looking in the East, they're looking in New York. A Russian buys the Nets. Well, why don't we bring Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving into what was the New Jersey franchise and make them a full-fledged Brooklyn team? And then we'll have a championship in New York. And then it doesn't work out because the Russian guy doesn't know what he's doing. And then there's always Boston. That's a big city in the East. It's a big basketball area. The amazing thing is Kyrie Irving belonged in both of those scenarios. Remember when he was pissed off because LeBron and the organization won't give me the keys to the car? Do you remember that horse shit? Oh, and by the way, the earth is flat. Remember that shit? I'm going to Boston in the springtime. It's a Dave Loggins reference. I don't expect younger people to. There are no younger people listening to this. Fuck younger people. They believe in conspiracy theories. I don't have time for that shit. Pretty bad when you're saying fuck young people. That's the future of this country. All right. So this is what the league does. There's New York. There's Boston. And then you have to make some hard decisions. Where is the biggest superstar in the East? Giannis. Milwaukee. We'll let Milwaukee win one. Yep. And how about the West? The Lakers, the Lakers, the Lakers, the Lakers. And then we have to figure out where the superstars are. It's like, there's Jokic. And there's a guy who's a little roly-poly, but really good in Dallas. That's the best we can do because the Lakers, the Genie Bus is going to fuck them up. That's that. Over and over and over again. And, if there was that last wonderful team in San Antonio that was a dream dynasty, there ain't going to be no fucking dynasties anymore. Let me explain the future of the Cleveland Cavaliers in plain English for you. Oh, we're getting a new coach. That's great. New attitude, so we can bring Darius Garland back. Now stop. Stop right there. Sounds like a Meatloaf song. Before you go any further, do you love me? I want to ask you a simple question. First of all, does bringing Darius Garland back to the Cavaliers improve our chances for a championship? But let's again start with what the NBA is really all about. For the suits, the owners, it's all about revenue, whether it's advertising revenue, fan revenue, and now gambling revenue. That's what the owners give a shit about. Money. Nothing more, nothing less. Now, then you have the referees, the officiating. They want to make a living and they want to placate the league's whims, so they cheat. All right. And now with more gambling money, they clearly cheat in ways that just make you shake your head. I've never seen a postseason where teams are getting 3 free throw shots for an entire game. That's just not possible. And it's happened a couple of times in the postseason, once to the Cavaliers, and most recently to the Pacers. It's pathetic, purely pathetic. And then there's the players. What's in it for the players? There's only really one thing. Of course, money is a big part of it, but what is there that the player, after X number of years, has some control over? Where they're going to play. That's why they have agents. And they learn from what's around them what the script is and where the better place to be is. Now, if Donovan Mitchell says, you know something? I'm going to sign my extension and stay in Cleveland. Darius Garland's people are going to say, Darius, there's no way you're ever going to be the Darius Garland with that guy Mitchell, who just has the ball in his hand so much. If you really want to realize your potential, you got to go somewhere else. And Darius Garland will go, you're right about that. I didn't stay at Vanderbilt for a reason. You know something? I think Cleveland is just a dot on a map. They're not going to win a championship anyway. Imagine if I could get on with a team that would allow me to do one of two things. One, to shoot the ball more and average 28 points a game so that I could become a star. Not likely to happen. Or that I can get on a team that wins a championship. Well, only if you change your ways and decide to distribute the ball and become a third fiddle, then maybe. But that's it. You've got Kobe Altman basically saying, I don't see any major changes. If you did, you're not going to tell us. But look at it for what it is. Did JB deserve to get fired? Yep. There's no question. You see, I got one of these. I do it with women. It's the Aunt Jemima treatment. No, I'm quoting a movie. It's Bill Murray. It wasn't me. He was a pest. You see, J.B. Bickerstaff was a pest. I was reading an article, and I even brought this article with me on ESPN.com. They made a comment saying that that it was a odd move that the Cavaliers would have fired him. They referred to it as a somewhat shocking dismissal. I don't think so. Not if you watch the whole season. Later down in the article, I love this too. They said Bickerstaff had his flaws, and then they list them. Rotations, adjustments, third quarter collapses, post All-Star break slumps. Well, why are you saying? What's so shocking about his dismissal? It's all based on the same thing, you see. These things that they mentioned. Rotations. He has no X and O ability. Adjustments. He acknowledged verbally, as we discussed in a previous program, that he doesn't believe in adjustments, and nobody else does either. Just don't talk to the great coaches from NBA history. Third quarter collapses because he doesn't make adjustments at halftime. Post All-Star break slumps because he's forcing too few players to play too many minutes. Rotation adjustments. What adjustments? He shortened everything up. He made sure CPJ didn't play anymore. He got Marcus Morris Sr. and never played him. And he just put George Niang on the floor and Karis LeVert on the floor as a secondary ball handler. And he's not a ball handler. That's one thing. Karis LeVert is not a secure ball handler. And he was the backup point guard, and CPJ was forgotten. Just that simple. J.B. Bickerstaff ruined the season for the Cavaliers. And I understand when he got the team, took control. He had a 22-win team, and they had some good, promising young players, and he took it as far as he could. And the limitations are in his own mind. He doesn't know what to do. Better that he's gone. I know that there's not a great number of choices for the next head coach. But now people are saying, well, I guess Donovan Mitchell threw him under the bus. And the funny thing is that in every account that I'm seeing, the writers of the articles are saying, not that Donovan Mitchell said a bad word about J.B. Bickerstaff. It's like he had the final interview. They said to him, hey, Donovan, how you feeling? And Donovan said, oh, I'm still a little sore, but, I wish, I wish that we would have gone a little further, but, I'm doing okay. No, how do you feel about J.B. Bickerstaff? And he goes, well, I'm crippled because of JB Bickerstaff. And to be honest with you, talk to my agent about that. I think we've already talked about that. But the writers are saying, we never said a bad word about him. Bang. The interview's done. JB's gone. Use your brain, please. Now, we'll go back. I want to go back because, news is leaked that Jared Allen is on the trade block. He is on the trade block. I've already told you. David Griffin wants him in New Orleans. Okay. He loves Jared Allen. And if there's any way to get him to New Orleans to get something that we can really use in return, Jared Allen will be gone. You cannot play with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley at the same time. It doesn't work. JB thought it would work, but it doesn't work. The game has changed too much. Everybody needs to stretch the defense a little. And neither Jared Allen nor Evan Mobley is capable of stretching a defense. So there's that. All right. So this is not news leaking. This is what people have known since the season ended and even before. The teammates were disappointed in Jared Allen and the realization that Evan Mobley is a better defensive player than Jared Allen. He still has some upside if some coach can come in and use him better. The fact that most of the minutes that these players received were with them individually on the floor in the back half of the season. Don't take my word for it. Look it all up. Jared Allen would sit. Mobley would come in. Mobley would sit. Jared Allen would come in because the two big men for this organization didn't work well together. And it's simple why. Because JB simple-minded. He thought the answer to the equation is got to play my scheme, got to put the big guy in the paint, and the same shit that Jared Allen does, we're going to make Evan Mobley do, and Evan Mobley doesn't do the same shit that Jared Allen does. He's not as big a man. So, what I can tell you is this. Darius Garland and his agent are going to search for opportunities for him to play where he wants to play because he wants the keys just like Kyrie did. I'll tell you something else. LeBron James even had to go to Miami to guarantee that he would have more championships. That's another one of the cities that the NBA favors and the players really like because of the weather. So you have that. Darius Garland, I see no way that he is going to be in Cleveland. He's going to force the team to do something. But to get back to the original question, what's in it for the players? First, they must establish value for themselves, which means when they come out of Vanderbilt or wherever the hell they come from in college basketball, they got to prove that they can play the professional game. And it's a great place to start with a shitty team like the Cavaliers were, because you're going to get more opportunities. You're going to make some more mistakes. Yeah, it's no different than watching Banchero and the Orlando Magic. It's great getting a start with a sucky team because you can learn and nobody's going to say, oh, God, he really sucks. And Banchero, of course, doesn't suck, and neither does Darius Garland. But once the team got better and the team starts, front office says, well, if we can put this guy together and this guy together, we can make a run at the championship, which they never will because it's not in the league's plans. By the time you get to a point where you can put together a good enough team, a guy like Garland is going to say, oh, they didn't give me the keys and I want to find my soul someplace else. But the first thing he did is establish value. He got his 100 million plus. And that's important financially for a player. But once he's into that contract and somebody's going to have to pay him that money, then you start looking for what's next. It's no different than if you had a job. Somebody offered you a job that you out-earned your previous job by an incredible amount. And you say, God, I got to take that job. What's the next thing you do? Well, I got to find a place to live. I got to find a nice neighborhood. A whole lot better than the neighborhood I used to live in when I had that other shitty job. It's no different. The athletes want to go to a certain city. They want to have some say in where they go. And I don't blame them for that. Everything is out of order because in the chat room, because people want to talk about different things. CO Dad, come back to me when I'm finished talking about the Cavaliers. We'll talk about Jameis Winston and Deshaun Watson and all this stuff. Amsterdam, I think that Mitchell will give them time, and I think that he'll give them the proper notice on this. The question is, a guy who's been in Utah and he's been in Cleveland, where's he going to go? And unless it's Miami, I mean, he ain't going to New York and let Tibbs cripple him. He ain't going to do that. But Miami, possibly. I never say a player won't do something because he's going to do what's best for him. I mean, for himself. That's the way it works. That's what the owners are doing. That's what the referees are doing and implementing cheating and gambling fraud. And 3, the players want to go where they want to go. Everybody's looking out for their self-interest. Oh, and by the way, what's in it for the fans? We've talked about what's in it for the owners, the referees, and the players. What's in it for the fans? You get to shell out big money out of your pocket to watch the games, and you get the right to gamble on them too. And you have the right to go on Twitter and be angry and to postulate impossible trades. That's what's in it for you. Grow up. You influence nothing. The silly things you post influence nobody. Fans' hearts will be broken. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. LeBron James brought a championship to Cleveland in a fair series against a team that the NBA didn't think they needed to fix. But they fixed them in the end, didn't they? It's amazing. It's funny what happened to the Nets after Kyrie and Durant left. Isn't that funny? They're right back to being the New Jersey Nets as far as I'm concerned. So let's see who else is making. Explains why some, if not most, teams want to move to part states like suburbs. Yeah, I mean, it's business. You know, if you're talking about what Brookhaven is that Brook Park? That's what it is. The Browns. Well, wherever, if Jimmy wants to put the goddamn stadium on top of a toxic waste dump in Brook Park, I mean, whatever they'll let him get away with, you know, whatever, as long as I don't have to pay for it. Woo! Oh, God. Let's see. What's next? I'm just trying to make this understandable for everybody. What can the Cavaliers actually do to get better? At this point, I think the thing they need to do most is to get a head coach in who has a vision. One thing I can tell you is this, and you learn from watching. The game has become so much more offensively oriented, and you got to have a lot of three-point shooters. Well, the thing that's interesting is the Cavaliers front office was wise enough to that, but they'd hired a coach who has no movement in his offense to get people open from the three-point line. if you look at the Indiana Pacers, the way they do it is they run the ball up the floor. It's all tempo. You'll notice that if they don't play defense on one end of the court, they immediately throw the ball in and they're running the other way, refusing to let teams get set. And there's JB Bickerstaff with his, all right, let's walk it over the midcourt line, dribble it, and see if we can get into a play set. And the fucking clock is down like 10, 11 seconds before they even start a play. You'll never spring anybody from behind the arc that way. And you wonder why Strus couldn't shoot the ball. You were wondering why the three-point shooting was off. It's because nobody was open. So there has to be a new concept. And it's funny, that's the exact word that Kobe Altman used as to why JB was like, oh, we need a new concept. But the concept is staying in touch with the times. The NBA is a different place now than it was. Big men can shoot from behind the arc. Big men can handle the ball. Ball handlers, predominantly, it's get rid of the ball as soon as it touches your hands. If you're going to drive to the rim, either finish or kick out to somebody who's open to throw up a three. That's the league. And when you get into the playoffs, you see, yes, the defense gets a little better. But JB's team could never score much more than 96, 98 points a game. Once the back half of the season and he exhausted and broke his players' will and spirit and bodies, nobody had to play any great, intriguing defense against the Cavaliers because, quite honestly, there was no motion in the offense. So, first thing is you got to have a concept to get players moving. You have a couple of guys already in Strus and Merrill who are perpetual motion machines. You should be able to get something going here. The other thing is you cannot have Karis LeVert handling the ball because that's not what he does, and he's never going to get into sets. And Darius Garland has to be in a scheme where he is told what he has to do. If he wants to be a 25-point-a-game scorer, go someplace else. We'll ship you off to the worst fucking place you can imagine. How about the Atlanta Hawks? That would be great. Look what happened to their gunner down there. They're saying Trae Young may want to go someplace else. That's for you, Darius. You could walk right into Trae Young's shoes and just start launching shots up. And nobody will want you any more than they want Trae Young, who can't play a lick of defense, is too small. He hasn't built up his body and his strength and depends upon awkward body movement and initiating contact himself to get to the free throw line. You can go that route, or you can become the player that facilitates other good players. That's it. And you're right, Christopher. Free agents, it's either people like George Niang who can figure out, well, you know, I could hang out at the spaghetti factory in Northeast Ohio and play there. It's all good. But no, there's not that much romance in Northeast Ohio. I love it here. But, oh, by the way, I'm going to do a plug on my next program probably. But Rox's birthday is tomorrow. And tonight, I'm taking her to a restaurant called the Twisted Olive. That's where we're going. And it's Italian food, and it's going to find out if it's good. So if it's good, I'll have something to say. I'd like to talk about local businesses in Northeast Ohio if they're doing things right. I can tell you places that don't do things right, but I'm not going to get sued by saying things like that on the air. We'll see how it goes tonight, but it looks like a very nice place, and it's got some solid money behind it. Real serious money behind it. Yeah, but usually this is a stop for players to prove themselves to go further, or if they've proved themselves as much as they're going to, and they've got to get some money from a bigger organization. That's usually what happens. Thank you, Christopher. I will tell her that you said happy birthday. So I guess what I'm saying is if you're waiting for the Cavaliers to win a championship, that's exactly what you'll be doing. You'll be waiting and waiting and waiting. There's only one time where the greatest player in the NBA was born in your backyard and longed to play in his backyard. For the Cleveland Browns, Bernie Kosar, who is no LeBron James, but that was such a big story, remember? Bernie's going to stay in Northeast Ohio, by God. And we're going to use a little tricky in with him in the supplemental draft. And he's going to come out after his junior year and he wants to play in Cleveland. And that was the biggest thing in the world. Everyone's like, wow, Bernie wanted to play in Cleveland. And then LeBron, not only did he want to play in Cleveland, he wanted to come back to Cleveland. That's all done. That's all in the past now. Thank you, Ron. I'll pass along your birthday wishes. But it only happens once in a lifetime, folks. If you're looking to find 3 good players to be on the court for the Cleveland Cavaliers at crunch time, you ain't going to ever see them. You're going to have to rely on one good player like Donovan Mitchell, who's really an exceptional basketball player. Hope that an Evan Mobley can develop a little bit more and then have some and that maybe a Darius Garland could become whatever it is that the new coach wants him to be. And then you have to fill in with role players that get the methodology. That's it. That's the only hope. So as I said, Tyrese Halliburton is questionable now for the remainder of the series. Oh, when they blew the first game, and it was so funny. The Pacers have done everything that they can possibly do to outplay the competition, but getting to the free throw line 3 times, you got to love that, don't you? All the top 2 players the Celtics have to do is push off and fade away, and they get the call in the and one. Ain't nobody at this point going to beat the Boston Celtics. They had that chance to win game 1, and then the corner 3, man. And you can't blame the defender. I mean, holy shit. He held his hands back so that the officials wouldn't call a foul on him. And you want to know the amazing thing? Jaylen Brown still fell to the ground after he shot it, faking contact, and made it. Amazing shot. But had it missed, I wonder if they'd have called a foul anyway, even though the guy was, who was it, Miles Turner? So now they're dead meat. And who really cares anymore anyway? If you're wondering who the new coach for the Cavaliers is, I don't know. I don't know enough about it yet, but I will. A lot of names being talked about, but I narrow down. When I hear names, I narrow down. I don't want to talk about 12 fucking people. That doesn't matter to me. Cleveland Browns. The question that was asked of me, why are the Browns seemingly pimping Jameis Winston more than Deshaun Watson? Well, look, if you've learned nothing from the whole beginning of things, when you put all of your eggs into Deshaun Watson's basket and he just gets hurt, and you end up having to play quarterbacks who haven't played in their careers, rookies like DTR, or God forbid, the other guy whose name I've forgotten already, who played in the, Mongoloid Football League. You got to groom a second guy. And that second guy, I mean, we were fortunate to find Flacco last year. Jameis Winston is a full-fledged, bona fide NFL quarterback. You may not think he's the greatest NFL quarterback, but if you live through Jacoby Brissett, you can live with Jameis Winston. But they're going to give him some reps, folks. Watson is coming off of a major shoulder injury and surgery. All accounts said that, he threw in front of the press and he threw the ball fine. And that doesn't mean dick to me. The question is, will receivers be open this year? Will the offense be more wide open? Will he be able to get rid of the ball quicker so he's not holding on to it so long, waiting for a big play that never develops? Is he going to stop running the ball and taking on tacklers head on? Well, there's only one way to protect yourself, and that is by getting Jameis Winston ready to play. Because had we had that last year, it would have made it a much easier road to where we ended up getting. And we probably wouldn't have had the multiple pick six game either that we had to live through with a 39-year-old quarterback who was due for just a bad game. I don't think that Mary Kay Cabbagehead pumps anything up except what the organization tells her to pump up. So, I mean, she is unfiltered propaganda. That's what she is. And yeah, she's going to go into the Hall of Fame. Can you hear about that? They're trying to pimp her for the Professional Football Hall of Fame. As a writer. It just shows you how low the standards are now. It's just pathetic. She never had a novel original thought in her life. She just sits there 45 minutes late on items, following other people, and then putting it on her timeline. It's foolishness. I would be considered a shill for Watson because I didn't want him to rot in a prison, A lot of the people, half the fans, wanted Deshaun Watson to be William Hayes from Midnight Express. Put him in a Turkish prison and let him get ass raped. So I would be considered a shill. Personally, I don't think it's Watson's fault that he gets hurt. I don't think that it's Watson's fault that he makes huge amount of money. I think that, it was like the guy we had on the program who was the Texans fan. He's bad-mouthing Watson. I said, wait a minute. I go back in your timeline. You love Deshaun Watson. He goes, yeah, when he played for us. And it's like, oh, come on. Deshaun Watson's a good quarterback. The problem is he still a good quarterback, or is his body falling apart? That's what we need to find out. But this year, you got to be prepared. And you needed a big body. DTR was so small, he was going to get snapped in half. And he finally did get snapped in half. And PJ Walker, that was the other guy. I mean, he's a small guy, too. He, with a predilection to just throw the ball wherever he felt like throwing it. He was Joe Flacco without the experience. And with Jameis Winston, he's a big guy, 6'4", 230-pound guy. And if you have two quarterbacks, you can get through a season. And in the NFL right now, the Cincinnati Bengals have found out that if you don't have a reliable quarterback, and it's funny, I don't hear any of the Cleveland fans saying, well, Joe Burrow, Joe Burrow, God, I wish we had him. I really wish we had him because, no, I don't hear anybody saying, God, he's missing games left and right. And the team is really suffering for it. Not a word. It's all Deshaun Watson. I think Deshaun Watson's a good quarterback. I hope that the scheme will allow him to be the Deshaun Watson who can look downfield a little, get the ball downfield. But I hope they need to be smart with him. And I hope that they will explain that don't always look for the big play. You got to settle sometimes for something underneath. Get rid of the ball. We can't afford to have you getting hurt. Rick May, you're absolutely right. Now, that's the reason why they're pumping up Jameis Winston is because Watson's only throwing every other day, right? Nobody's rushing Deshaun Watson. So you're going to be seeing a lot more reps from Jameis Winston. So there's more to write about. And what else is there? If you're sitting there watching the practice and you're a member of the press, that's what you spit out. Everybody looks good. I mean, I saw a video of Caleb Williams. It's like, man, he just looks like an NFL quarterback. I go, what does an NFL quarterback look like? What is the similarities? Tell me between Brock Purdy. I mean, let's use different examples. Joe Flacco, Troy Aikman, Joe Montana. What does an NFL quarterback look like? When nobody's covering the receiver, they all look pretty good. Brandon Whedon could throw a ball to a guy who is just trotting down the field. Give me a fucking break. It's what happens during the course of the decision-making process in the game. That's what matters. That's what separates the men from the boys. And last year's offense was not at all suited. Stefanski's tight end 1-3 bullshit offense had nothing that would appeal to Deshaun Watson and his skill set. And that was the amazing thing, is that you would pay him as much money as we paid him, and you wouldn't even have a system that would make him shine. Well, maybe we will now. That we'll have to see. But I think Deshaun Watson is progressing. I think that health-wise, they're being careful about it. And I'm hearing people say, Nick Chubb's trying to be back for week 1. And you bet your ass he's trying. That guy's more want to than I've seen in a star player in a long time. If there's a way, he'll find the way. But I don't think he's going to be ready for week 1. And I don't think most people do. But he's an amazingly good worker, as well as being a great athlete. So that has something good to say about that. As far as the Browns are concerned, they got to figure out their running game. They got to figure out who the lead runner is in this thing. And if it's Jerome Ford, we better have a healthy offensive line. It's incredible when you stop and think. The guys who are all on the mend from surgery on that offensive line. And, from what I hear, some are closer to returning than others. And DeJuan Jones is kind of falling behind. And again, DeJuan Jones was really good when he got going. But the question will always remain about his tenacity and his desire, his willingness to play hurt. And we'll see how he heals and whether he can go out there and give his all. Conklin, he'll be hurt again in 3 games, 4 games. I think that's a given at this point in his career. I mean, it's been that way for some time now. But we need to build up that offensive line and to get running lanes, because if you don't have a clear lane for Jerome Ford, he's not Nick Chubb, who can see like a great chess player, can see moves ahead. He isn't like that. You just give him a hole and tell him to run through it. He's more Isaiah Crowell, you know? There's where you're supposed to run. Now put your head down and run. And he can get yardage if he's going north-south. But you don't want to see him running wide. You don't want to see him making cutbacks. And the cutback that he makes, that's as far as he sees the play going. And without a running game, you got a problem on your hands. Let's see if there's anything else. Oh, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Guardians. The Guardians have been a surprise. Although ESPN still ranks them as the number 6 team and not moving up, even though they keep winning games. That's because the Yankees and the Orioles, again, the national narrative is always what the national narrative will be, surrounding, cities like New York and Los Angeles and all that shit. Well, the Guardians are back on the road against the Angels. All right. They swept their home series and did so really well. Logan Allen will be pitching tonight, and of course, it's a late start game. It was nice to see the new guy, Rodriguez, get up to the plate and hammer a ball to right field and get his first big league hit and RBI. That's always great to see. And it's nice to see that Manzardo is hitting the ball on a line. It hasn't translated into home runs yet, but he's hitting balls opposite field, line drives in the gap that are going to the wall, banging off the wall, getting over the outfielders' heads like they were shot out of a cannon. It kind of reminds me of a younger Jim Thome, who started out that way as more of a line drivey hitter. And then as he matured and his body grew, started hitting more home runs. The bat speed is there from Manzardo. He needs to get a better understanding of the strike zone right now. And I'll tell you something else that is nothing short of remarkable as far as the Guardians organization. It's a ridiculed organization, and I'm right up there with people saying, God, what would happen if you actually spent some money on this team? But you look at a guy like Cade Smith. I mean, they find these relief pitchers, they develop them in their minor league systems, and right now it's Clase who's your closer. And now, but you can see that they're kind of grooming Cade York. The guy's got a 98-mile-an-hour fastball. He throws strikes, and he's overpowering. And that was like what Karinchak was when they brought him up before his arm trouble. And it's a remarkable thing to see. You've got the change of pace guy, Nick Sandlin, who's throwing submarine sliders, and he has a changeup that's got wicked downward away from left-handed hitter motion. And he's pitched really well in those middle innings to get us through. And then you've got the guys who do the heavy lifting at the other end. Hunter Gaddis, who's really kind of been the setup man, who had a couple of bad appearances in a row, but then has gotten his shit back together again. And he was ineffective as a starter, but he can just throw as hard as he wants for an inning now. And you have Cade Smith, who is another example of a guy who's just going to go out and he's just going to rev it up. And then you've got Clase at 99-100. And Clase throwing more splitters now instead of, fooling around with just regular fastballs. He's throwing the split more and more and trying to get ahead of hitters. He doesn't walk a lot of batters, but he's not trying to strike everybody out. And that was the problem with Karinchak. Karinchak had he had two great pitches. He had the rising fastball that he could get people to swing at and chase, and he had the big 12-6 curveball. But everything he threw as hard as he could, and his mechanics were awful, and his arm has been a problem ever since. Class A is a guy who's pitched so many innings. We burn him out here in Cleveland. We burn him out. And so you always got to have the next guy in line. But it is interesting to see how right now, and it isn't just like right now in the last 3 games, but the timely hitting of this team has been a shock. I mean, you've got a game in which you're down by 2 runs, 3-1, and you've got Jimenez at the plate. And basically in the on-deck circle, you've got Jose Ramirez. You don't want to face Jose Ramirez because you've seen what he does to teams. So you're basically 3-2 with Jimenez. And you say, well, don't want to walk him. Because then you end up with a Ramirez. It'll go over the wall. So we want to make sure we don't walk him. So we're going to throw him something, and it's going to be a strike. And it's down and in, and he just launches it over the right field wall. 4-3 in a blink. It's not the first time this has been happening. They really have done a nice job. And you take a look. The only real questions I have about this team, besides the fact that they can't continue coming back and doing things like what they're doing, is why is Arias even still being looked at? He doesn't hustle out of the batter's box to get down the line. He is not a good contact hitter. He strikes out way too much. And the power that he might bring is negated by the fact that he doesn't hit the ball often enough. That's the thing with him. Rocchio is a guy who's got some good fielding ability, and he can hit the line drive. And, you want to compare him to a poor man's Omar Vizquel, but they got to settle him down, man. He's got to he plays a little brainless out there. The game that he almost lost for the team by, instead of just throwing a sure out at first base, he tries to run to the bag and gets beaten there by the man on first, going to second base with 2 men out in the 9th inning. Young players do make mistakes, but it's nice seeing the young players coming along too. So, I'm on the Guardians bandwagon because of the players, not the organization, but the players. I think that they're really maxing out what they've got. And what's amazing to me is not only them, but that the Royals are staying right with them. Both surprise teams. That's what I got for you today. I got to jump in a shower and then head up to the Twisted Olive. That's going to be the restaurant. And I don't go out to eat very much these days, losing weight and doing what I'm doing. But hey, special night. It's Rox's birthday. So actually her birthday's tomorrow, but we're doing the dinner thing tonight. And they booked us in there at 7:45. So we're going to be hanging out there, and we'll see what happens. Everybody, I hope you have a real pleasant weekend, and I hope you're getting through all of this allergy shit. This room is probably the worst room, the one I'm broadcasting, because of Topaz. This is where he sleeps, and all that, the pet dander and the allergens, the pollen in his fur. So tomorrow I am getting an air purifier for this studio that will clear the air so that I'm not feeling like I'm better than I was, because the pollen has dropped a little bit, and I put in a HEPA filter in the house here, doing what I can. So hopefully I won't be so drippy. Thanks, Rick. I appreciate it. And everybody, Thanks a lot for joining me on this edition of Moohead Radio. I'll see you again on Monday. Until then, hasta la vista, Pasture Heads. Good night.